I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. I was standing at my kitchen counter rolling out pie dough for Thanksgiving when my phone rang. The flour scattered across the marble countertop, the same countertop where my husband David and I had made 1,000 meals together over 40 years. It was Margaret from next door. Her voice had that careful, uncomfortable tone people use when they're about to tell you something they think you should already know. "Ashley, honey," she said, "I hope I'm not overstepping, but I saw your house listed on Zillow this morning." My hand stopped moving. The rolling pin settled into the dough, creating a deep groove I'd have to work out later. "I'm sorry. What?" "Your house. It's for sale. I was looking at properties in the area for my niece and yours popped up. $450,000. I just wanted to say I'm going to miss you terribly as a neighbor. Where are you planning to move?" The words didn't make sense. Each one was clear enough on its own, but strung together like that they might as well have been in a foreign language. "Margaret, I need to call you back." My fingers felt thick and clumsy as I pulled up the browser on my phone. Flour dusted across the screen, leaving white smudges that blurred the words as I typed my own address into the search bar. And there it was. 247 Maple Grove Drive. My home. The house David and I had purchased in 1985, back when interest rates were 13%, and we'd stayed up nights wondering if we could really afford it. The house where I'd brought my daughter Sophia home from the hospital, where David had taught her to ride a bike in the driveway where he'd died 2 years ago, in the sunroom in his favorite chair, with the morning light coming through the windows, just the way he liked it. Listed for sale. $450,000. The photos were professional. Someone had been in my house with a camera. The living room looked immaculate, better than it usually did. They must have come when I was at my book club on Wednesday. I scrolled through the images, my chest getting tighter with each one. My bedroom. David's study that I still couldn't bring myself to change, even though his coffee mug had been sitting on the desk for 2 years, leaving a faint ring in the wood. The kitchen where I was standing right now, somehow looking both familiar and completely foreign through the lens of a stranger's camera. I set the phone down carefully. My hand was shaking. I knew exactly who had done this. There was only one person with a key to my house besides me. Only one person who'd been suggesting for months now, subtly at first, then less so, that I should downsize and simplify my life. My daughter Sophia, my only child who used to curl up on the couch with me every Sunday afternoon and watch old movies, who used to tell me I was her best friend. That was before she married Patrick 5 years ago. I want to be fair to Patrick. When Sophia first brought him home 6 years ago, I tried to like him. I really did. He was charming at first, said all the right things about loving my daughter, about wanting to take care of her. He had a good job as a financial analyst, wore expensive suits, drove a nice car. But David saw through him immediately. I remember the night after Sophia and Patrick left from their first dinner with us. David and I were washing dishes together. He washed. I tried the same routine we'd had for decades, and he said, "That man counts other people's money." I'd laughed, tried to brush it off. "He's a financial analyst, honey. That's literally his job." "No." David set down the plate he'd been scrubbing and turned to look at me. His face was serious. "I mean, he looks at what people have and calculates what he could do with it. Watch him. He's always calculating, always measuring value, and I don't think he knows the difference between a person's worth and their net worth." David died 2 months before their wedding. A heart attack in his sleep, sudden, the doctors said, though. They also said he'd probably been having symptoms for months and just didn't tell anyone. Didn't want to worry me. I sometimes wondered if the stress of knowing Sophia was marrying Patrick had contributed to it. The doctors said no, said it was genetic inevitable, but I couldn't help thinking about all those conversations David and I had late at night, him expressing concerns about Patrick that I kept dismissing as overprotectiveness. On his deathbed, though we didn't know it was his deathbed at the time, David had gripped my hand. We were sitting in the sunroom, his favorite spot in the house, and he said, "Don't let anyone push you around, Ashley. Not even Sophia. Especially not Sophia." I hadn't understood what he meant. Not then. Now, standing in my kitchen with my house listed on Zillow, without my knowledge or consent, I understood perfectly. I called my daughter. She answered on the 3rd ring. I could hear traffic in the background. She was probably out shopping, spending money they didn't have. Patrick was always complaining about his job, about how they couldn't get ahead, couldn't save for their future. "Mom, I was just going to call you. Are you making your famous pumpkin pie for Thursday? Patrick's been talking about it all week." The casual normalcy in her voice made something cold settle in my stomach, like ice water slowly filling up from the inside. "Sophia," I said, keeping my voice steady, "why is my house listed for sale on Zillow?" Silence. I could hear the traffic sounds continuing in the background, but Sophia said nothing. "Sophia? Oh," her voice changed, became careful. "You saw that?" "Yes, I saw that. Margaret from next door saw it too. She called to tell me she'd miss me as a neighbor. So I'll ask you again, why is my house my house? Sophia listed for sale. Mom, don't get upset. I was going to talk to you about it this week. I promise. Patrick and I have just been looking at the numbers and it really makes sense. You don't need that big house anymore." I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at my backyard. Half an acre like Sophia had said that day. David had planted 3 apple trees back there the year Sophia was born. They were mature now, heavy with fruit every fall. "Don't need it," I repeated. "I see. You're 68 years old, Mom. The yard alone is half an acre. The roof is going to need replacing soon, you know that. The furnace is ancient. And you're in that house all alone, rattling around in 4 bedrooms you don't use. It's too much." "Too much for me," I said flatly. "Yes. I'm sorry, but yes. We're worried about you. What if you fall, and there's no one there to help? What if something happens with the furnace in the middle of winter? You can't keep maintaining a property this size at your age. It's not safe." I looked around my kitchen. The kitchen where I'd made pancakes every Sunday morning for Sophia when she was little, always cutting them into funny shapes, heart stars, Mickey Mouse ears. The kitchen where David and I had danced on our 20th anniversary, drunk on wine and happiness and the impossible luck of having found each other. The kitchen where I'd sat alone the night after his funeral, trying to figure out how to keep breathing. This is my home, Sophia. I know, Mom, and we're not trying to take that away from you. We've actually been looking at some really nice assisted living communities. There's one in Meadowbrook that has a beautiful dining room, and they do activities every day. Bingo movie nights, field trips to museums. You'd have so much more social interaction. You'd make friends your own age. Assisted living. The words felt like a slap. I don't need assisted living. I'm not incapacitated. I'm 68, not 98. No one's saying you are Mom. Her voice had that patient, condescending tone she'd started using about a year ago. The tone that made me feel like a child being explained something simple that I was too dim to understand. But you're alone, and we just want you to be safe and taken care of. At these communities, there are people around all the time. You'd have friends' socialization activities. It would be so much better than being isolated in that big house. I have friends. I have a life. Mom, she sighed. Let's be realistic. The house is worth $450,000. After we pay off your remaining mortgage and cover the realtor fees and closing costs, you'd clear about $380,000. That's enough to pay for a nice assisted living apartment for years. And there'd still be money left over. Money left over. For her. For Patrick. I could hear it in her voice, the same calculating tone David had warned me about in Patrick. The same tone that had somehow infected my daughter. Did you discuss this with Patrick before you discussed it with me? Another pause, shorter this time. Patrick helped me run the numbers, yes. He's good with finances, Mom. He just wants to help. We both do. By selling my house. By helping you plan for your future. Mom, you're not getting any younger. None of us are. What happens in 5 years when the house really is too much for you? When you can't handle the stairs anymore? When you need more help than you're willing to ask for? We're trying to be proactive here. We're trying to help you while you can still participate in the decision. I closed my eyes. When had my daughter become this person? When had she started talking about me like I was a problem to be solved, an asset to be managed? When had she started saying we instead of I, as if she and Patrick were a single unit and I was the outsider? Take the listing down, Sophia. Mom, take it down now. This is not your decision to make. I think we need to talk about this in person. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? Patrick and I can show you all the research we've done. We found some really wonderful places, Mom. Places where you'd be happy and safe and... I'm not coming over for dinner. I'm going to call whoever you hired to list this house, and I'm going to tell them to remove it immediately. The realtor's name is Sandra Mitchell. Sophia's voice had gotten colder. But Mom, you should know she's already scheduled 3 showings for this weekend. There's a lot of interest. The market is really hot right now, And with the holidays coming up, this is actually the perfect time to... I hung up. My hand was shaking so hard I had to set the phone down on the counter. I stood there for a long moment looking at the half-rolled pie dough at the flour scattered across my workspace at the kitchen that was mine in the house. That was mine. And I felt something I hadn't felt since David died. Rage. Pure clarifying rage. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through my contacts. Jim Patterson. David's lawyer. Our lawyer. Jim had handled David's estate after he died, had been patient with me through all the paperwork and legal procedures I hadn't understood. He'd told me at David's funeral to call him anytime I needed anything. He answered on the second ring. Ashley, good to hear from you. How are you holding up? Jim's voice was warm, genuine. He and David had been friends for 20 years before David died. Jim, I need to know exactly what David's will says about the house. His tone shifted immediately, becoming professional. Is everything all right? My daughter has listed my house for sale without my permission. She seems to think she has some right to make decisions about my property. Let me pull the file. I heard papers rustling, the sound of a file cabinet drawer opening. Outside my kitchen window, I watched a cardinal land on one of David's apple trees. It sat there for a moment, bright red against the yellowing leaves, then flew away. Okay, here we are. Jim's voice came back on the line. The house was in both your names until David passed. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Upon his death, sole ownership transferred automatically to you, Ashley Henderson. You are the sole owner of the property at 247 Maple Grove Drive. And Sophia is listed as your heir in the event of your death, but she has no current legal claim to the property whatsoever. She cannot sell it, cannot take out loans against it, cannot make any decisions about it without your explicit written consent. Do you understand what I'm saying, Ashley? This is your house, yours alone. The tightness in my chest loosened slightly. And if I were to change my will, you can change your will anytime you want. It's your will, your property, your decision. You could leave the house to Sophia, to a charity, to your book club, to the local animal shelter. It's entirely up to you. Could I leave it to someone other than Sophia? Absolutely. You have complete discretion over your estate. I took a breath. Thank you, Jim. Ashley, do you want me to call this Realtor? I can make it very clear that she's been operating without the property owner's authorization. That could put her license at risk. No, I said. I want to do it myself. I found Sandra Mitchell's number on the Zillow listing. The website said she worked for Premier Properties, one of those upscale real estate agencies with offices in expensive shopping centers. She answered professionally. Sandra Mitchell, Premier Properties. How can I help you? This is Ashley Henderson. You have my house listed at 247 Maple Grove Drive. Oh, Mrs. Henderson. Yes, I've been working with your daughter, Sophia. She mentioned you might call. I understand there's been some miscommunication about the timeline. There's been no miscommunication, Ms. Mitchell. I am the sole owner of that property. My daughter had no authority whatsoever to list it. I want that listing removed immediately. Her voice became cautious. I see. Well, Mrs. Henderson, I do need to verify ownership before making any changes to a listing. Do you have the property deed available? I have it right here. I was already walking to David's study to the filing cabinet where we kept all our important documents. David had been meticulous about organization. Everything was labeled, filed, easily accessible. I can fax it to you, email it, scan it, and text it to you, whatever you need. But I want that listing down today. Right now, if possible. Of course. I apologize, Mrs. Henderson, but when Sophia hired me, she did sign the listing agreement. She indicated that she had power of attorney for property decisions. She lied to you. Silence on the other end of the line. I'm going to give you my lawyer's number, I said. His name is Jim Patterson. He can verify everything I've told you. But I want to be very clear, Ms. Mitchell, my daughter had no legal authority to list my house. If those showings happen this weekend, if anyone enters my property without my explicit permission, I will consider it trespassing and I will call the police. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Let me get your lawyer's information. I gave her Jim's number, then called Jim back to warn him that Sandra Mitchell would be calling. He said he'd take care of it. 20 minutes later, Sandra Mitchell called me back. Mrs. Henderson, I owe you a sincere apology. I've removed the listing from all platforms, Zillow, Realtor.com, our agency website. Your lawyer has confirmed ownership, and I've canceled all scheduled showings. I should have verified the power of attorney documents before moving forward. This is entirely my fault, and I'm very sorry for any distress this has caused. Did my daughter pay you anything? She paid a retainer, yes, $2,000. Keep it. Consider it payment for your time and trouble. But if Sophia tries to list any property of mine again, I trust you'll verify ownership first. Absolutely, Mrs. Henderson. Again, I'm so sorry for the confusion and any upset this may have caused. I hung up and sat down in David's chair. The leather was worn where his elbow used to rest. I could still smell his cologne if I closed my eyes. Old Spice, the same one he'd worn since I met him in 1982. Still feel his presence in this room, in this house. What would he think of Sophia now? His little girl who he'd loved so fiercely, who he'd carried on his shoulders at every parade, who he'd taught to drive. Even though it made him so nervous, he'd come home gray-faced and sweating. What would he think of her trying to sell his house out from under me? My phone rang again. Sophia. Mom, Sandra just called me. She said you had the listing removed. I did. Mom, we need to talk about this rationally. I am being rational. This is my house, my decision. You had no right. We were trying to help you. Her voice rose frustrated. Do you have any idea how much that house costs to maintain? The property taxes alone are $6,000 a year. The utilities, the upkeep, the insurance, Mom, you're living on Dad's life insurance payout and Social Security. That money isn't going to last forever. How do you know what I'm living on? She hesitated. Just for a second, but I heard it. How do you know about my finances, Sophia? When Dad died, you were so overwhelmed with everything. All the paperwork, the accounts, the bills. I helped you organize it all. Remember, I helped you set up online banking so you could manage everything more easily. That doesn't answer my question. Another pause. I still have access to your online banking, Mom. I check it sometimes just to make sure you're okay. To make sure you're not getting scammed or making any unusual purchases that might indicate. You've been monitoring my bank account. My voice came out flat, emotionless. I didn't even recognize it. Mom, please don't make this sound sinister. I'm your daughter. I love you. I'm trying to help you plan for your future because clearly you're not doing it yourself. You're spending money on things you don't need, keeping that huge house when you should be saving. Get out of my bank account, Sophia. Mom, I want you out of my bank account. I want you to stop making decisions about my life without consulting me. And I want you to understand something very clearly. I took a deep breath, looking around David's study. At his books on the shelves, his coffee mug on the desk, his reading glasses folded on top of a stack of papers he'd never get to read. This house is mine. If and when I decide to sell it, that will be my decision. Not yours, not Patrick's, mine. Do you understand? Fine. Her voice was cold now, all the pretense of concern stripped away. Fine, Mom. Keep your house. Keep your independence. But don't come crying to me when you can't manage anymore. Don't call me when you fall down those stairs and there's no one there to help you. Don't expect me to drop everything to take care of you when you're old and sick and realize too late that you should have listened to us. Patrick and I were trying to ensure you'd be taken care of. We were trying to help you while you still had options. But if you want to be stubborn and foolish, that's your choice. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there in David's chair, my heart pounding. My daughter, my only child, the baby I'd rocked to sleep 1,000 times, whose tears I'd dried, whose triumphs I'd celebrated. When had I become her burden instead of her mother? When had my home become her inheritance to claim before I was even gone? The house was very quiet. I could hear the old furnace rumbling in the basement, the ancient furnace that Sophia was so worried about. I could hear the wind rattling the windows that probably needed replacing. I could hear all the sounds of this old house settling around me, and I could hear David's voice in my head. Don't let anyone push you around, Ashley. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Sophia had said, about being alone, about falling down the stairs, about money running out. I'd been so focused on the violation, on the betrayal, that I hadn't stopped to consider whether she might be right about some things. I got up around 3 in the morning and went through the house, really looking at it. The roof did need replacing soon. David and I had been talking about it the year before he died. The furnace made odd noises sometimes. There were things I'd been putting off because David had always handled them, and now I didn't know where to start. The house was big. 4 bedrooms when I only used 1. 2.5 bathrooms when I only needed 1. A formal dining room I hadn't eaten in since David's funeral. A finished basement I never went into. Half an acre of yard that I paid a service to maintain because I couldn't do it myself anymore. but this was my home. I made coffee as the sun came up, watching it rise through the same kitchen windows I'd watched it rise through for almost 40 years, and I thought about David, about what he'd said. Don't let anyone push you around. But I also thought about what he hadn't said. He hadn't said, don't ever ask for help. He hadn't said, do everything alone. He hadn't said, don't be practical. At 9 o'clock, when I knew Jim Patterson would be in his office, I called him. Ashley, how are you this morning? I need to update my will. All right. What changes did you want to make? I looked around my kitchen, at the flour still scattered across the counter from yesterday's interrupted pie making, at the rolling pin sitting in its drawer, at the coffee maker David and I had gotten as a wedding gift that still worked perfectly after 43 years. I want to leave the house to the Elmwood Community Center. Silence on the other end. Then gently, Ashley, I have to ask, are you sure this is your daughter we're talking about? I'm sure, Jim. David and I volunteered at Elmwood for 15 years. They run programs for seniors, for kids from low-income families, for people who need help. They're always struggling for funding, always trying to do more with less. They could sell the house and use the money for their programs. Or they could use it as additional space they've been wanting to expand. Either way, I want them to have it. And Sophia has made it very clear that she views my house as a financial asset, not as my home. She's made it very clear that she thinks she knows better than I do about how I should live my life. I don't want to reward that kind of thinking, Jim. I want my house to go somewhere it will do good in the world. I can draft those documents for you. But Ashley, I have to recommend that you think about this for a few days before we make it official. Big decisions made in anger. I'm not angry anymore, Jim. And it was true. The rage from yesterday had burned itself out, leaving behind something clearer and colder. I'm thinking very clearly. For the first time in 2 years, I know exactly what I want. All right, I'll have the documents ready by the end of the week. We'll need to have them notarized, witnessed. Can you come to my office on Friday? I'll be there. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I thought about Sophia, about the little girl she used to be, the teenager who'd come to me with boy problems and friend drama, the young woman who'd cried in my arms when her first serious boyfriend broke up with her. Where had that girl gone? When had Patrick's voice become louder than mine in her head? My phone buzzed. A text from Linda, one of my book club friends. Hey, are you okay? Margaret mentioned something about your house being listed. Call me if you want to talk. I stared at the text for a moment. Then I started typing. I'm okay. Long story. Are you free for coffee this morning? Her response came immediately. Always. Meet you at Common Grounds at 11. Common Grounds was one of those coffee shops that had been in town forever. David and I used to come here every Saturday morning, sitting at the same corner table, sharing the newspaper, and arguing good-naturedly about the crossword puzzle. Linda was already there when I arrived, sitting at that same corner table. She'd ordered me my usual black coffee with just a touch of cream and had a blueberry muffin waiting. Okay, she said as I sat down. Tell me everything. So I did. I told her about the Zillow listing about Sophia's plans to put me in assisted living, about the bank account monitoring. Linda listened without interrupting, her face growing more troubled with each detail. That's awful, Ashley. I'm so sorry. The thing is, I said, stirring my coffee even though it didn't need stirring. Part of me wonders if she's right. Maybe I am too old for that house. Maybe I am being stubborn and foolish. Stop. Linda's voice was firm. I'm 62 years old. Last year, my son tried to convince me not to go back to school for my master's degree. Said I was too old, that it was a waste of money at my age. You know what I told him? I shook my head. I told him that I had at least 20 good years left, and I was going to spend them doing what I wanted, not what he thought I should do. She leaned forward. I've got news for both our children. We're not dead yet. We're not even close to dead, and we don't need their permission to live our lives. I felt something loosen in my chest. Thank you. Have you talked to anyone else about this Susan Tom from church? Not yet. You're the first person I've told besides my lawyer. Linda pulled out her phone. I'm texting Susan and Tom right now. We're having an emergency book club meeting at my house tomorrow afternoon, and I'm making it very clear that this is mandatory. Linda, you don't have to. Yes, I do. That's what friends are for, Ashley. Now drink your coffee before it gets cold. We sat there for another hour, talking about everything and nothing. Linda told me about her classes, about the 23-year-old study partner who kept being surprised that she could work a laptop. I told her about the garden I was planning for next spring, about the apple trees that were David's pride and joy. It felt normal. It felt like I wasn't alone. When I got home, there was a car in my driveway, a silver Mercedes that I didn't recognize. For a moment, I felt a spike of fear. What if Sophia had given the key to someone? What if one of those potential buyers had decided to come by anyway? But then the driver's side door opened and a man got out. He was maybe 70, tall and lean with white hair and kind eyes. It took me a moment to place him. Tom Whitmore from church, the man who'd lost his wife Sarah the same year I lost David. "Ashley," he said, walking toward me, "I hope you don't mind me stopping by. Linda called me. She said you might could use a friend." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "Tom, you didn't have to drive all the way over here." "Actually, I did. I have something I need to tell you, and I think you need to hear it." He looked uncomfortable. "Can we go inside?" We sat in my living room, the room that had looked so perfect in those real estate photos, but now felt like mine again. I made tea. Tom sat on the couch where David used to sit, and I realized with a start that this was the first time I'd had a man who wasn't family or a repairman in my house since David died. "About 3 months ago," Tom began, "Sophia came to see me at my house." I set my teacup down carefully. "What?" "She said she was worried about you. Said you'd been forgetful, repeating yourself. Said she was concerned about your ability to manage your finances and take care of yourself." He paused. "She asked me if I'd noticed any signs of cognitive decline." The room felt suddenly too small, too warm. "What did you tell her?" "I told her the truth, that you seemed sharp as a tack to me, that we'd had several conversations at church, and you'd never once seemed confused or forgetful." He leaned forward. "But here's the thing, Ashley. She didn't seem relieved. She seemed disappointed. Disappointed. Like she'd been hoping I'd confirm her concerns." Tom's face was troubled. I didn't think much of it at the time. Thought maybe I'd misread her reaction. But then a few weeks later, I ran into her at the grocery store. She asked me again more specifically this time. Asked if I'd ever seen you wandering around church looking lost. If I'd ever heard you tell the same story twice in one conversation. If I thought you should still be driving. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs. I told her no to all of it. And then I asked her directly, "Sophia, are you trying to build a case that your mother is mentally incompetent?" She got very defensive. Said she was just concerned that I didn't understand because I wasn't family. Then she left. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought maybe I was wrong. Thought maybe I was being paranoid." Sarah's son tried to pull something similar with her before she died. Tried to get her declared incompetent so he could control her medical decisions. I thought maybe I was seeing shadows where there weren't any. He met my eyes. "But Linda told me about the house being listed, about Sophia monitoring your bank account. Ashley, I don't think I was wrong." I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the afternoon sun was slanting across the yard. The apple trees cast long shadows on the grass. "She's been planning this," I said quietly. "For months, maybe longer." "It looks that way." I turned to face him. "Tom, did she talk to anyone else? Anyone else from church, from my book club?" He hesitated. "I don't know. But if I were you, I'd ask around." Linda's emergency book club meeting turned out to be more than just Linda, Susan, and me. When I arrived at her house the next afternoon, there were 6 cars in the driveway. Inside, I found not just Linda and Susan, but also Tom Margaret from next door, and 2 women I recognized from the Elmwood Community Center, Patricia and Donna, who ran the senior programs. "I hope you don't mind," Linda said, taking my coat. "But I thought you needed to hear some things, and some of us needed to tell you some things." We gathered in Linda's living room. She'd made coffee and put out cookies like this was a normal social gathering. But the faces around me were serious. Susan spoke first. "About 6 weeks ago," she said, "Sophia called me. Said she wanted to talk to me about you. We met for lunch." My stomach dropped. "She asked me a lot of questions. Did I think you seemed depressed? Had I noticed any memory problems? Did you ever seem confused during book club discussions? Did you ever miss meetings or forget what book we were reading? What did you say?" I said no to all of it. "You're one of the most engaged members of our book club, Ashley. You always have the most insightful comments." Susan's voice was angry now. But she kept pushing. Kept suggesting that maybe I hadn't noticed, that maybe you were good at hiding it. Finally, I told her that I thought she was way off base and I ended the lunch. Margaret spoke up next. She talked to me, too, about 2 months ago. Asked me if I'd noticed anything unusual about your behavior. If you ever forgot to bring in your trash cans or left your garage door open all night. If I'd ever seen you gardening at odd hours or wandering around outside in your nightgown. That's insane, I said. I've never done any of those things. I know that. I told her that. But Ashley, she took notes, like she was documenting everything I said. Patricia from Elmwood spoke up. She came to the center about a month ago, said she was researching assisted living options for you, asked about our programs, our facilities, but she also asked a lot of questions about residents with dementia, about memory care units, about what happens when someone can no longer make decisions for themselves. The room was very quiet. Everyone was looking at me. She's been building a case, Tom said. A case to prove you're mentally incompetent. Linda pulled out a folder. I did some research last night. In this state, someone can petition for conservatorship if they can prove that a person is unable to manage their own affairs. It's usually used for people with severe dementia or other cognitive impairments, but it can be abused. If she could get you declared incompetent, Susan said, she could take control of everything. Your house, your bank accounts, your medical decisions, all of it. I felt like the room was tilting. But I'm not incompetent. Any doctor would confirm that. Which is probably why she hasn't filed yet, Linda said. She's been gathering evidence, talking to your friends and neighbors, documenting anything that could be interpreted as concerning. If she could get enough people to say they'd noticed problems, it might be enough to at least force a competency evaluation. And those can be traumatic, Patricia added quietly. Even if you pass, the process itself is stressful and invasive. And there's always a stigma attached once someone has raised the question. I looked around at all these faces. These people who'd taken time out of their day to come here to warn me to help me. I thought about Sophia, my daughter, talking to each of them, trying to build a case that I was losing my mind. What do I do? My voice came out smaller than I intended. Tom leaned forward. First, you document everything. Every conversation with Sophia, every attempt she makes to access your accounts or make decisions for you. Jim Patterson can help you with that. Second, Linda said you get a comprehensive medical evaluation. Physical and cognitive. Have your doctor document that you're in good health and mentally sound. That way, if she does try to petition for conservatorship, you have recent medical evidence on your side. Third, Susan added, you change all your passwords, bank accounts, email, everything, and you make sure Sophia doesn't have access to anything. Fourth, Margaret said, you don't meet with her alone. If she wants to talk, make sure someone else is there. A witness, Patricia spoke up. And fifth, and this is important, Ashley, you build your own support network. Make sure you have people checking on you, spending time with you. Not because you need supervision, but because it shows that you're engaged, social active, that you have a community. I looked at all of them. You're my community. Yes, Linda said firmly. We are, and we're not going anywhere. That evening, I made an appointment with my doctor for a full physical and cognitive assessment. Dr. Helen Rodriguez had been my physician for 15 years. She knew me, knew my medical history, knew that I was as sharp at 68 as I'd been at 50. The next morning, I went to the bank. I closed the joint account that Sophia had access to and opened a new one in my name only. I changed all my passwords. I went through every piece of paperwork in David's study and made sure everything was organized and documented. And then I did something I should have done 2 years ago. I started going through David's things. His clothes were still in the closet. His shoes still lined up by the door. His coffee mug still on the desk. I'd left everything exactly as it was the day he died, like if I just didn't touch anything, he might come back. But he wasn't coming back, and it was time to face that. I started with the closet. I folded each shirt, each pair of pants, remembering when he'd worn them. This blue sweater was the one he'd had on the day Sophia announced her engagement to Patrick. This jacket was what he wore to church every Sunday. These jeans had grass stains on the knees from when he'd been planting those apple trees. I set aside the things Sophia might want: his watch, his wedding ring, some photos. The rest I folded into boxes to donate. When I got to his desk, I found something I hadn't expected. A letter, addressed to me in David's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before he died. My hands shook as I opened it. My dearest Ashley, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the heart problems. I'm sorry I won't be there to grow old with you like we planned. I'm sorry for so many things, but I'm not sorry for the life we built together, for the 40 years we had, for our daughter, even though I worry about the choices she's making. I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. Sophia is not like you. She's like my father. My father was a good man in many ways, but he saw everything through the lens of money. What something cost, what it was worth, what it could be sold for. He loved me, but he also saw me as an investment, as something that should produce a return. I see that same quality in Patrick, and I see it starting to show in Sophia. I don't say this to hurt you. I say it because I need you to protect yourself. The house, the savings, everything we built, that's yours, Ashley. It's yours to do with as you choose. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for wanting to stay in your own home, live your own life, make your own choices. You are the strongest, smartest, most capable woman I've ever known. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. And don't let anyone, not even our daughter, push you around. I love you. I'll always love you. And I'll be waiting for you on the other side whenever you're ready to join me. But not too soon, okay? You've got a lot of living left to do. Yours always, David. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. He'd known. Even 2 years ago, he'd known what Sophia might try to do. My phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but then I saw it was Jim Patterson. Ashley, I finished drafting the new will, but there's something else I need to discuss with you. Do you have a few minutes? Of course. I did some research into conservatorship cases in this county. In the past 5 years, there have been 12 petitions filed. Of those 12, 5 were filed by adult children seeking control over their parents' estates. He paused. 3 of those 5 had the same attorney, Douglas Barrett. He specializes in elder law and conservatorship cases. Why are you telling me this? Because I made some calls. Patrick and Sophia had a consultation with Douglas Barrett 3 weeks ago. The world seemed to stop. They're actually going to do it, I said. They're actually going to try to have me declared incompetent. It looks that way. But Ashley, I want you to know something they're going to lose. You're going to get a clean bill of health from Dr. Rodriguez. You've got multiple witnesses who can attest to your mental acuity. You've got organized finances, a maintained home, an active social life. Any judge would see that this is a cash grab, not a legitimate concern for your welfare. But they're still going to try. They might. Or they might back off once they realize you're prepared. Either way, we'll be ready. After I hung up, I sat in David's study for a long time holding his letter. Outside, the sun was setting. The light came through the windows at that golden angle David had always loved. I thought about Sophia, about the little girl who used to make me Mother's Day cards covered in glitter, about the teenager who'd cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak, about the young woman who'd been my best friend. That girl was gone. Or maybe she'd never really existed. Maybe I'd just seen what I wanted to see. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Mom, we need to talk. Patrick and I want to take you to dinner tomorrow night, please. We need to clear the air. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I remembered what Margaret had said. Don't meet with her alone. I typed back. I'm happy to talk, but not at a restaurant. Come to the house at 2 p.m. tomorrow. I'm inviting Jim Patterson to be here as well. Her response came quickly. Why do you need a lawyer present, Mom? We're family. 2 p.m. tomorrow. Jim will be here. If that's not acceptable, we don't need to meet. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Fine, we'll be there at 2. I forwarded the exchange to Jim, then to Linda. Then I walked through my house, turning on lights in every room. This house that David and I had built a life in. This house that Sophia wanted to take from me. I stood in the kitchen where it had all started, where Margaret's phone call had shattered my peaceful Thursday morning. The pie dough was long gone, thrown away, but the rolling pin was still in its drawer, waiting. Maybe I'd make a pie tonight after all. Not for Thanksgiving anymore that had come and gone while all this was unfolding, but just because I wanted to. Because this was my kitchen in my house, and I could make a pie at midnight if I damn well pleased. I pulled out the flour, the butter, the ice water. I started measuring, mixing, rolling. The familiar motions were soothing, meditative. By the time I slid the pie into the oven, it was almost 10 o'clock. The house smelled like apples and cinnamon, like home. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and David's letter. I read it one more time. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. And don't let anyone, not even our daughter, push you around. I won't. I said out loud to the empty kitchen. I promised David. I won't. Outside, the moon was rising over the apple trees. The same moon that had risen over this house for 40 years. The same moon that would keep rising long after I was gone. But I wasn't gone yet. Not by a long shot. And I wasn't going anywhere. The next afternoon, I dressed carefully. A navy blue pantsuit that David had always said made me look powerful. Pearl earrings he'd given me for our 30th anniversary. I put on makeup, fixed my hair. I wanted to look strong, capable, completely in control. Jim Patterson arrived at 1:30, giving us time to prepare before Sophia and Patrick showed up. "How are you feeling?" he asked, setting his briefcase on the dining room table. "Surprisingly calm," I said. And it was true. The fear and anger from the past few days had crystallized into something harder, clearer. Determination. Good. Remember, this isn't a negotiation. You're not here to compromise or find middle ground. You're here to set boundaries and make your position absolutely clear. I understand. I've brought copies of the property deed, your updated will, and a letter from Dr. Rodriguez confirming your medical and cognitive health. If they try to suggest that you're not capable of making decisions, we shut that down immediately. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sophia and Patrick standing on my porch. Sophia looked tired, her makeup not quite concealing the circles under her eyes. Patrick looked annoyed, his jaw set in that way that meant he was already angry before the conversation even started. "Mom," Sophia said, trying to smile. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "Come in." They followed me to the dining room. Patrick's eyes went immediately to Jim, sitting at the head of the table with his briefcase open. "I see you brought your lawyer," Patrick said. His tone was just shy of hostile. "Yes, this is Jim Patterson. He handled David's estate, and he's helping me with some legal matters. Please sit down." Sophia and Patrick sat across from Jim and me. It felt like we were on opposite sides of a negotiation table, which I supposed we were. "So," Patrick said, not waiting for anyone else to speak, "are we going to talk about this reasonably, or are we going to keep playing games?" "I'm not playing games," I said quietly. "This is my home, and these are my decisions." "Ashley," Sophia said, her voice taking on that patient, condescending tone again. "We understand you're upset. We should have talked to you before listing the house. That was a mistake. But the reasoning behind it is still sound. You need to think about your future." "I am thinking about my future. That's exactly what I'm doing." Patrick leaned forward. "With all due respect, I'm not sure you are. You're living in a 4-bedroom house that's costing you approximately $1,800 a month in mortgage, taxes, insurance, and utilities. You're 68 years old, living alone with no income except Social Security and what's left of David's life insurance payout. That money won't last forever." "How do you know the details of my finances?" I asked. Sophia and Patrick exchanged a glance. "We've been monitoring your accounts," Sophia said, "to make sure you're okay, to make sure you're not making any financial mistakes." "Monitoring? You mean invading my privacy?" "We mean taking care of you," Patrick said. "Someone has to." Jim spoke for the first time. "Actually, what you've been doing is called financial surveillance, and it's a form of elder abuse. Ashley is a competent adult with every legal right to privacy regarding her finances." Patrick's face reddened. "Elder abuse? We're trying to help her. By listing her house without permission, by accessing her bank accounts without authorization, by questioning her mental competence to her friends and neighbors." Jim's voice was calm, but his words hit like hammers. Sophia's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you—" I pulled out my phone and opened my notes. 3 months ago, you met with Tom Whitmore and asked him if he'd noticed signs of cognitive decline in me. 6 weeks ago, you had lunch with Susan from my book club and asked her the same questions. 2 months ago, you questioned Margaret about whether I seemed forgetful or confused. A month ago, you went to the Elmwood Community Center asking about memory care facilities. "I was concerned about you," Sophia said, but her voice was shaking. "You were building a case," Jim said. "And 3 weeks ago, you and Patrick had a consultation with Douglas Barrett, an attorney who specializes in conservatorship proceedings." The silence in the room was deafening. "We just wanted to know our options," Patrick said finally, "in case Ashley's condition deteriorated." "My condition?" I stood up, my hands pressed flat on the table. "There is nothing wrong with my condition. I am 68 years old. I am in excellent health. I have a sharp mind, an active social life, and the complete legal right to make my own decisions. Mom, please sit down, Sophia said. You're getting agitated. I'm getting agitated. You tried to sell my house. You've been spying on my bank account for 2 years. You've been going around to my friends trying to convince them I'm losing my mind. And you have the nerve to tell me I'm getting agitated. Jim put a hand on my arm. I sat down, but the anger was still boiling inside me. Let me make something very clear, Jim said, looking directly at Sophia and Patrick. Ashley is the sole legal owner of this property. She is mentally competent. We have documentation from her physician confirming this. Any attempt to list this property for sale without her explicit written consent is fraud. Any attempt to petition for conservatorship based on false or exaggerated claims of incompetence is a form of elder abuse that could result in criminal charges. Criminal charges. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, the state takes elder abuse very seriously. Patrick stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We're her family. We're trying to help her. And you're threatening us with criminal charges. Sit down, Mr. Morrison, Jim said quietly. We're not finished. Patrick remained standing for a moment, then slowly sank back into his chair. I took a breath, trying to steady my voice. Sophia, I need you to understand something. When your father died, I was lost. I was grieving, confused, overwhelmed. You helped me organize things, and I was grateful for that. But somewhere along the way, you stopped helping and started controlling. You stopped asking me what I wanted and started telling me what I needed. Because you weren't making good decisions, Sophia said. You were just drifting through life, not planning for anything. I was grieving. I was healing. And I was doing it at my own pace, in my own way. By staying in this huge house all alone, by refusing to even consider other options, by living my life the way I choose to live it. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, at the lines of stress around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. Sophia, what's really going on here? This isn't just about the house, is it? Another glance between Sophia and Patrick. This one lasted longer. Tell her, Patrick said finally. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. We're in trouble, Mom. Financial trouble. How much trouble? Patrick lost his job 8 months ago. The words came out in a rush. We've been living on credit cards. We're $85,000 in debt. The bank is threatening to foreclose on our house. The room went very quiet. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because we didn't want you to worry, Sophia said, and because we thought we could handle it. Patrick was sure he'd find another job quickly, but the market is tough, and he's been out of work for so long now that it's even harder to get interviews. So you decided to sell my house to solve your financial problems. It wasn't like that, Patrick said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then what was it like? Jim asked. Patrick rubbed his face with both hands. Look, I'm not proud of this, okay? But yes, we thought that if Ashley moved into a smaller place, something more appropriate for her age, the money from selling this house could help everyone. Ashley would be taken care of in a nice facility, and we could pay off our debts and get back on our feet. How much of the $380,000 were you planning to use for my care? I asked. Silence. I looked at the Meadowbrook facility you mentioned, I continued. A 1-bedroom apartment there cost $95,000 up front, plus $2,000 a month. So let's say you put aside $120,000 for my first year of care. That leaves $260,000. How much of that were you planning to keep? More silence. All of it, I said. You were planning to keep all of it. We would have taken care of you, Sophia said. Whatever you needed, we would have made sure, until the money ran out, Jim interjected. And then what, based on the spending patterns Patrick just described, $260,000 wouldn't last you more than 3 or 4 years. Then Ashley would be in a care facility she couldn't afford, and you'd be right back where you started. We would have figured it out, Patrick said weakly. No, I said. You would have expected me to figure it out. You would have expected me to sell something else to dip into whatever savings I had left to somehow make it work. Because that's what I've always done, isn't it? Made things work. Fixed problems. Taken care of everyone. Sophia was crying openly now. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to go this far. It started as just an idea, just a what-if conversation with Patrick. But then things got worse, and the idea became a plan, and the plan became this. It became you trying to take my home away from me. I know, and I'm sorry. I looked at my daughter, my only child, crying at my dining room table, and I felt something crack inside me. Not break, but crack. Like a thaw beginning after a long, hard winter. "Sophia," I said quietly, "look at me." She raised her eyes to mine. "Your father told me something before he died. He said not to let anyone push me around. Not even you. Especially not you." She flinched. I didn't understand what he meant at the time, but I understand now. He saw something in Patrick and in you when you were with Patrick that worried him. He saw someone who counts other people's money, who measures relationships in terms of value and return on investment. "That's not fair," Patrick started, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. Patrick, you're in financial trouble. I understand that. And I'm genuinely sorry that things have been difficult for you. But your solution was to take my home, my security, my independence. Not to ask for help. Not to have an honest conversation. But to trick me, manipulate me, and when that didn't work, to try to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could take control by force." It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. My voice was hard now. Jim has documented everything. Every conversation with my friends and neighbors, every login to my bank account, the consultation with the conservatorship attorney, all of it. Patrick's face had gone from red to pale. "Are you going to press charges?" I looked at Jim, then back at Patrick. "No," I said. "I'm not going to press charges, but I am going to set some very clear boundaries, and if you violate them, that answer will change." I pulled out the folder Jim had prepared. Inside were several documents. "First," I said, sliding the first document across the table, "this is a cease and desist letter. You are to have no further contact with my friends, neighbors, or associates regarding my mental or physical health. You are not to discuss my finances with anyone. You are not to access any of my accounts, bank, email, medical, or otherwise. Any violation of these terms will result in a restraining order and possible criminal charges." Sophia was staring at the document like it was written in a foreign language. "Second," I continued, sliding another document forward, "this is a copy of my updated will. I have left this house to the Elmwood Community Center. They will use it to expand their programs for seniors and low-income families. You are still my heir for my personal effects and a small monetary bequest, but the house and the primary value of my estate will go to Elmwood." "Mom, no. I'm not finished. Third, I am willing to help you with your financial situation, but on my terms, not yours." Both Sophia and Patrick looked up at that. "I will loan you $20,000. Not give loan. You will sign a promissory note with a repayment schedule. The loan will be interest-free, but it must be repaid within 5 years. This is not negotiable." "$20,000 won't even cover half our debt," Patrick said. "No, it won't, but it will give you breathing room to make a plan, to get credit counseling, to find employment, to solve your own problems instead of trying to solve them by taking what isn't yours." "And what are the conditions?" Patrick asked. I looked at Sophia. "The first condition is that Sophia moves out, temporarily." "What?" Sophia's voice was sharp with surprise. "You need space from Patrick. You need time to figure out who you are without his voice in your head telling you what to think and what to do. You need to remember that you're my daughter before you're his wife." "You can't ask me to leave my husband," Sophia said. "I'm not asking. I'm setting a condition for my help. If you want the loan, Sophia moves out for 6 months. She gets her own apartment. She gets a job. She goes to therapy, individual therapy, not couples counseling. She rebuilds her sense of self." "This is insane," Patrick said. "This is the deal," I replied calmly. "Take it or leave it." "And what about me?" Patrick asked. "What am I supposed to do while my wife is living somewhere else? You figure out your own financial situation. You find a job, any job. You go to credit counseling. You start making payments on your debt. You prove that you can be a responsible adult who doesn't need to steal from his mother-in-law to survive." Patrick stood up again, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. "I'm not going to sit here and be insulted." "Then leave," I said. "But understand this, if you walk out that door right now, the offer is off the table. Permanently." He stood there for a long moment, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Then he looked at Sophia. "Soph, we don't need her help. We can figure this out ourselves." But Sophia was looking at me, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, I don't know if I can do this." "Do what? Leave Patrick for 6 months." "Leave him at all. I love him." "I know you do, but Sophia, love isn't supposed to make you into someone you're not. Love isn't supposed to make you betray your own mother. Love isn't supposed to turn you into someone who schemes and lies and builds cases against the people who raised you. That's not fair. It's completely fair. Look at yourself, Sophia. Really look at what you've become. Is this who you want to be? She put her head in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Patrick put his hand on her shoulder. Sophia, let's go. We don't need this. We don't need her. But Sophia shook her head. When she looked up, her face was streaked with mascara, but her eyes were clearer than I'd seen them in years. Yes, we do, she said quietly. I do. Mom's right. I don't even recognize myself anymore. She looked at Patrick. When did I become someone who tries to take away her mother's house? When did I become someone who spies on bank accounts and lies to friends? When did I become you? Sophia. No, Mom's right. I need space. I need to figure out who I am without you telling me who I should be. Patrick's face hardened. Fine, if that's what you want. But don't come crying to me when you realize you've made a mistake. Don't come crawling back when you realize that your mother is manipulating you just like she always has. Patrick, Jim said warningly. But Patrick ignored him. He looked at me with pure hatred in his eyes. You think you've won. You think you've gotten your daughter back. But you've just pushed her into making a choice she's going to regret for the rest of her life. He turned and walked out. A moment later, we heard the front door slam. The three of us sat in silence. Sophia was still crying, but quietly now. Sophia, I said gently, are you sure about this? She nodded. I'm sure. I should have done it a long time ago. Maybe if I had, we never would have gotten to this point. What will you do? Where will you go? I have some money saved. Not much. Patrick doesn't know about it. It's an account my grandmother left me, and I never told him about it. There's about $15,000 in it. I can rent a small apartment, find a job. I used to be a librarian before I married Patrick. Maybe I can get back into that. You were a good librarian, I said. You loved that job. I did. She looked at me with something like wonder in her eyes. I'd forgotten that. I'd forgotten that I used to love anything besides trying to make Patrick happy. Jim cleared his throat. I have the loan paperwork here. If you're both ready to sign, we can make this official. We spent the next hour going over the documents. The cease and desist letter, the promissory note for the $20,000 loan, a contract outlining the conditions: 6 months of separation, individual therapy, regular employment. When everything was signed and witnessed, Jim packed up his briefcase. I'll leave you two to talk, he said. Ashley, call me if you need anything. After he left, Sophia and I sat across from each other in the suddenly quiet dining room. I'm sorry, Mom, she said. For all of it. For the house, for the bank account, for everything. I don't even know how it got so out of control. It got out of control because you stopped listening to yourself and started listening to Patrick. You stopped asking, what do I think is right? And started asking, what does Patrick think I should do? When did I do that? I think it started right after your father died. You were grieving, vulnerable. Patrick was there being supportive, having all the answers. It felt good to let someone else make the decisions for a while. But then I never took back control. No, you didn't. Sophia looked around the dining room. This house has so many memories. It does. I used to love this house. Remember how Dad and I would play hide and seek, and I always hid in the same closet upstairs, but he always pretended he couldn't find me. I smiled despite myself. He'd walk right past that closet 3 or 4 times, calling your name until you finally burst out laughing. And remember the time we made that gingerbread house for Christmas, and it collapsed because we used too much frosting. It was more frosting than gingerbread. Your father ate the ruins with a spoon. We sat there for a while remembering, slowly, carefully finding our way back to each other through the wreckage of what we'd become. Mom, Sophia said finally, I understand why you changed your will. I don't blame you. But is there any chance if I do everything you asked, if I really change? Is there any chance you might change it back? I thought about that. About the will sitting in Jim's office. About the house I'd decided to leave to Elmwood. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now I need to see that you can be independent. That you can make good choices. That you can be the daughter I raised, not the person Patrick turned you into. That's fair. But Sophia, even if I do change the will back someday, there would be conditions. You couldn't sell this house for at least 10 years after I'm gone. It would have to remain in the family or be donated to charity. I won't have it become just another financial asset to liquidate. I understand. She stood up, and for a moment I thought she was going to leave, but instead she walked around the table and hugged me. Really hugged me like she used to when she was little, and something had scared her, and she needed to know that Mom would make everything okay. I love you, she whispered. I'm so sorry I forgot that for a while. I love you too, sweetheart. I never stopped. The next few weeks were strange. Sophia found an apartment on the other side of town, nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom in an older building. She got a job at the public library working part-time in the children's section. She started seeing a therapist twice a week. She called me every Sunday afternoon. At first, the conversations were awkward, stilted. We didn't know how to talk to each other anymore. But gradually, we found our rhythm again. She told me about the kids at the library, about a regular patron who always smelled like peppermint, about learning to cook for one after years of cooking for two. I told her about book club, about the new roof I'd finally gotten installed, about Tom asking me to dinner, and my surprise at realizing I wanted to say yes. You're dating? She asked, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I'm having dinner with a friend who happens to be male. That's not quite the same as dating. Mom, if you like him, it's okay. Dad would want you to be happy. I know, it just feels strange. Strange good or strange bad? Strange new, but maybe new isn't bad. Patrick called me once about 3 weeks after the confrontation. He wanted to talk, he said, to apologize. I told him I would accept his apology when he'd spent 6 months proving through his actions that he was worthy of it. He hung up without another word. Sophia filed for divorce 2 months later. She cried when she told me, but I could hear the relief underneath the sadness. I think I knew it was over that day in the dining room, she said. The way he looked at you with such hatred. The way he tried to get me to leave with him knowing how much I needed to stay. He didn't love me. He loved what I could do for him. And now I'm learning to love myself. Dr. Brennan, my therapist, says that's the most important relationship I'll ever have. Dr. Brennan sounds wise. She is. You'd like her. Thanksgiving came again. A year since Margaret's phone call. A year since my world had been turned upside down. This time I didn't make pie alone in my kitchen. This time I hosted a dinner. Linda and Susan came, of course. Margaret from next door. Tom, who'd become more than a friend over the months. Patricia and Donna from Elmwood Center. Jim Patterson and his wife Carol. And Sophia. She arrived early to help me cook. We worked side by side in the kitchen that was still mine in the house that was still mine, and it felt like old times. Better than old times, actually, because now we were both whole people, both making our own choices, both standing on our own feet. I have something for you, Sophia said as we were setting the table. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $2,000. It's the first payment on the loan, she said. I'm 3 months ahead of schedule. Sophia, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Not because of the contract, but because it matters to me. I borrowed money and I'm paying it back. I'm being responsible. I'm being someone I can be proud of. I hugged her tight. I'm proud of you too. When everyone was gathered around the table, David's table, the one he'd refinished one summer, I stood to say grace. Something I hadn't done since David died, but something that felt right now. I'm grateful for this house, I said, looking around at all these faces. And I'm grateful for all of you, for the friends who stood by me when things got hard, for the daughter who found her way back to herself, for the community that reminded me I'm never really alone, and for the man I lost who taught me to stand up for myself even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult, Tom added quietly. Especially then. We ate and talked and laughed. Sophia told stories about the library kids. Linda talked about her master's thesis. Tom mentioned his trip to Italy and asked carefully casually if I might want to come along next time. Maybe, I said, meeting his eyes. Maybe I would. After dinner, after the dishes were done and most of the guests had left, Sophia and I stood on the back porch. The apple trees were bare now, their leaves long gone, but they'd bear fruit again come spring. Mom, Sophia said, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? I thought about that, about the year I'd had, about the betrayal and the pain and the difficult choices, about the house I'd fought to keep, the will I'd changed, the boundaries I'd set, about the daughter I'd nearly lost and found again, about the life I'd built, destroyed, and rebuilt stronger. Yes, I said, I'm happy. Maybe not every minute of every day, but overall, yes, I'm happy. Good. She squeezed my hand. That's all I want for you. We stood there together in the November cold, looking out at the backyard where David had planted those apple trees 35 years ago, where Sophia had played as a child, where I'd cried after David's funeral, where I'd stood alone and decided not to be pushed around anymore. Mom, Sophia said, thank you. For what? For not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. You're my daughter, I said simply. I'll never give up on you. She leaned her head on my shoulder and I put my arm around her, and we stood there watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Inside the house, my house, the house that love built, I could hear the sounds of Tom and Jim talking of Linda helping Margaret find her coat of life, continuing in all its messy, beautiful complexity. This house held 40 years of memories. It held laughter and tears, births and deaths, fights and reconciliations. It held the ghost of David in every room and every piece of furniture and every creaking floorboard, but it also held something new. It held the possibility of future memories, of Thanksgiving dinners and book club meetings and maybe someday Sunday dinners with Tom, of Sophia visiting with the grandchildren I hoped she'd have someday, of growing older not in isolation but surrounded by community. I'd fought for this house not because it was valuable, but because it was mine. Because it represented my right to make my own choices, live my own life, be my own person. And I'd won. Not just the legal battle, not just the fight to keep my property. I'd won something bigger, the right to define my own life on my own terms at any age. Come on, I said to Sophia. It's getting cold. Let's go inside. We walked back into the warm-lit house together, my daughter and me starting over, starting fresh, starting right. Behind us, the apple trees stood silent in the November dusk, waiting for spring, waiting to bloom again. Just like us. I was in my garden when Sophia's car pulled into the driveway. It was late May, and David's apple trees were covered in blossoms, filling the air with their sweet, faint perfume. She got out of the car, and I noticed immediately that she looked different. Lighter, somehow. Like she'd been carrying a weight for so long she'd forgotten it was there, and now it was gone. Mom, she called, walking across the lawn. I have news. Good news or bad news? Good news. Great news, actually. We sat on the back porch where the late afternoon sun made everything golden. The divorce is final, she said, as of yesterday. How do you feel? Free. She smiled and it reached her eyes. Scared but free. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. And there's more. I got promoted at the library. They're making me the head children's librarian. It comes with a raise and full benefits. Sophia, that's wonderful. And she paused, looking nervous. I met someone. Nothing serious yet, just coffee a few times. But Mom, he's kind. He asks me what I think about things. He actually listens to my answers. It's so different from Patrick, I finished. Yeah, she was quiet for a moment. I'm taking it slow. Dr. Brennan says I need to really know who I am before I can be in a healthy relationship with someone else. Dr. Brennan is right. But I wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I reached over and took her hand. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. So proud. We sat there for a while watching the sun move across the yard. Finally, Sophia spoke again. Mom, I need to tell you something else. What is it? Patrick called me last week. He wanted to talk about reconciliation. My whole body tensed. And I said no. I told him that what we had wasn't love. It was codependency and financial desperation dressed up as partnership. I told him that I'd spent 6 months learning to be my own person, and I wasn't going to give that up. Not for him, not for anyone. What did he say? He got angry. Said I was ungrateful that he'd wasted the best years of his life on me, that I'd never find anyone else who'd put up with me. She smiled, but it was sad. The old me would have believed him, would have apologized, would have taken him back just to avoid being alone. But you didn't. But I didn't, because I'm not alone. I have friends, a job I love, a mother who fought for me even when I didn't deserve it. And most importantly, I have myself. I like who I'm becoming, Mom. I don't want to lose her again. I squeezed her hand. You won't. I'll make sure of it. Actually, she said, reaching into her purse, I have something else for you. She handed me another envelope. Inside was a check not for $2,000 this time, but for the full remaining balance of the loan. All $18,000. Sophia, you can't, this is too much. I got a small inheritance from Grandma's sister. She passed away last month, left me $30,000. I used some of it to pay off my credit card debt, some to buy a reliable used car, and the rest to pay you back. You could have kept that money, used it for yourself. I am using it for myself. I'm using it to close the last chapter of my old life and start the next chapter debt-free. Literally and figuratively. I looked at the check, then at my daughter. I'm going to deposit this, and then I'm going to update my will. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You've proven yourself, Sophia. You've done everything I asked and more. You've become the woman I always knew you could be. This house should be yours someday, with the condition we discussed that it stays in the family or goes to charity. But it should be yours. Tears welled up in her eyes. Thank you. Thank you. For coming back to yourself. For coming back to me. We hugged there on the porch, holding each other tight, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years, complete peace. Inside the house, my phone rang. It was Tom calling about dinner plans. We'd been seeing each other regularly for months now, nothing rushed, nothing forced. Just two people enjoying each other's company, seeing where it might lead. The apple trees bloomed overhead. The sun warmed the garden David had planted. The house stood solid and strong behind us, filled with memories and ready for more. I was 69 years old. I was in love with my life. I was surrounded by people who respected me, valued me, saw me as a complete person rather than a problem to be solved or an asset to be managed. I was home, and I was staying.